Hi, and welcome to Terribly Fun Films. I'm your host, Bobby, and we're continuing with our Dragon Con countdown. As I mentioned in the other Dragon Con reviews, headed to Dragon Con this year, September 1st, and I am going through and reviewing various cheesy and/or B-movie-esque things a majority of the celebrities who are going to be there have been in. If you have seen the title of this, which clearly you clicked on it, so you have, the movie is Spirit Trap. If you're unfamiliar with it, it's a London-based horror film from 2005 starring Billie Piper. That is the Dragon Con star we're looking at today. I have seen this movie before, and I really enjoy it. So, let's find out why. Before we get into the review proper, I want to discuss something that isn't always brought up in films. Opening title sequences. This movie's opening title sequence is awesome. I really enjoy this opening title sequence. It's fairly simple. It's just a bunch of clockwork gears and that sort of thing moving about in a sort of a cube the movie esque way, and to reveal the names of our cast, writers, directors, all that jazz. But it really sets the tone straight out of what we're about to see, and the sort of trippiness of starting off with these sorts of images does kind of already put you on edge. And I'm really pleased with that. I think it's a really cool way to start the film. Plot is not 100% original, but it does do some unique things that gives it a real refreshing feel. Five 20-somethings move into an old mansion, and weird things start happening. If they weren't 20-somethings, I just described either version of The Haunting. I just described Amityville Horror, The Conjuring. So many different movies have we move to a new place, weird shit happens. However, the kicker here is that it's all based on a clock. While they're fiddling about and just trying to get used to it, they see this old clock that's not running. So one of these characters fixes it and it starts running again. And after that, people are hearing and seeing weird things. Some of them are having hallucinations, and it all accumulates into a very interesting point. And I do try to avoid spoilers on this show, so that's all I'm going to say there. I think the inclusion of that clock and its eventual super importance to the plot works really, really well in helping this feel very, very different from other haunted house type movies. And I don't mean movies that take place in haunted houses a la The House is October Built. I mean movies that are about houses that have ghosts or spiritual beings or something haunting them. Reason for that is because I think it gives the proceedings and the haunting a very clear case of what's going on. These ghosts are not haunting these people because they've moved into their house or anything like that. It is very much tied to history and specifically to this clock, and it is where the title of the movie Spirit Trap comes from. And once all is revealed, it actually does not feel like you've seen something that's totally cliched. Crediting that, I would say, are the screenwriters, Phil O'Shea, Paul Finch, and Rohan Kanapa? there are some cliche things, some things that will not surprise you, some things that are telegraphed and you'll see coming. But in terms of why the hauntings were happening, and in terms of how it's resolved, and in terms of what making it all tick, so to speak, and that was an unintentional pun because it's fairly engaging, fairly interesting, and I really appreciate that. I wish some of their dialogue writing would have been that up to snuff in terms of originality and engagement, but that was not to be. The dialogue is perfectly okay. It's just exposition heavy, and then we have a lot of the moments where the characters are sort of forced into weird banter with each other, even though they haven't really built that up, and it's a bit frustrating in that regard. I do think the characters, specifically Jenny, Billie Piper's character, and Tom, played by Luke Mabley, have some really interesting arcs that they go through, and again, the reason they're chosen, them and the others who are in the house, because of these arcs, has a very personal resonance with them, and I think the movie does good with that. Basically, anytime the movie is focusing on the actual hauntings and the events and how this ties into our characters' personal lives and the actual spirit trap, it's really smart and clever and does hit some cliches. There are a number of jump scares that you'll see coming, but it doesn't the movie kind of earns them by being kind of original in a lot of ways. And anytime we're just having characters sit around talking to each other, getting to know each other as they're all strangers before they move into this place, minus one couple who are dating, it feels not as strong. It's not as well thought out. It feels like they just needed some connective tissue to get to the next big set piece, if you will. And maybe that's just because the haunting stuff is so different and original for what it is, mind you, that this is that the drop off is steeper than it would be if this is a more generic haunting movie. I'm not sure there, but I hope that makes sense. Directed by David Smith, the movie, given that it's 99% in a single house, looks really good. I do attribute that to the art and production design by Carolyn Greville Morris, Stuart Rose, and Sylvan Poropka. The house looks really interesting from the get-go. The clock especially looks really cool. It's kind of just a giant grandfather clock, but it's got some steampunk ways that you can see the gears and the pendulum that swings. It doesn't look like a typical grandfather clock pendulum. So that's really cool. I like that quite a bit. I also like the shots showing us the mansion generally speaking, so we can get a lay of the land. This happens very early on. So once the craziness does start happening, we have a firm grasp of where we are in relation to the characters, in relation to the hauntings, in relation to what they think they saw or heard, that kind of thing. And that does help the movie keep up a sense of atmosphere, and that is greatly appreciated. That's not to say director David Smith doesn't add anything. Obviously, he's the director. He has final say over these things. He definitely does. Especially in terms of camera, shots, angles, and cinematography. Yeah, it's set in a house, but they get a lot out, especially of the color palette and the lighting of certain sequences, especially in some flashbacks and some hallucinations. that really are cool to see. You get a lot of roving camera shots that'll be going up or down the stairs or peeking around a corner just as something's about to happen or just is happening to kind of keep you on your toes, and that makes the house feel alive, which isn't always something that comes across in haunted house movies like this, and that's a really enjoyable element. The costumes are okay. It's set in modern day, 2005 is when it came out, so modern day then, and that's just basically just wearing kind of what they would wear if they were going out to dinner or going to their job or whatever, and they're perfectly fine. Guy Fletcher's score is totally unmemorable. I cannot recall the theme from the movie. I cannot recall a person's personal theme if they had one. It's there. I don't remember it being bad whatsoever in any particular sequence, so it at least does its job well enough. But it never jumps off the screen and becomes its own entity. It never grabs you. The editing by Simon Cousins is pretty good. Not great. Again, we do rely on some jump scares at times, and there's one sequence where two people are standing right next to each other and hits one of them, and it's a fake punch, that kind of thing, but it's so obviously a fake punch due to how it's edited that it took me out of that sequence and that moment. That's the only real bad editing part in the film. Most of the editing is perfectly fine, and closer to the end, between jumping from Billie Piper's mom's death, which isn't a spoiler. We find out her mom is dead 15 or so minutes into the film, so I don't feel I'm spoiling anything. I'm not going to explain how she died or what that has to do with the rest of the movie, but and what the spirit trap is looking for, who they're looking for it from, and all that. That basically the entire climax of the movie, the last 20 or so minutes, really perfectly edited. Outside of the sequence I just mentioned, which is a bit poorly edited, all the editing before then has been okay. It's alright, but it really comes into its own in that last 20 minutes. Playing the 5 20-somethings who move into the mansion are Billie Piper as Ginny, and she's good here. That shouldn't be too much of a surprise. Started off as a pop singer, became fairly famous for that, releasing 2 CDs, then retiring from music, and even throughout her musical career, she had bit parts in various things. Once she retired in 2000 or 2001, she took up acting full-time. So she'd already been acting full-time for a few years by the time this movie came out. She's very empathetic, very good as essentially the main character, even though it is an ensemble. Eventually all roads kind of lead to her story arc. She's really empathetic, and you just kind of see her and you instantly like her. She brings the same quality she brings to the companion Rose in Doctor Who, which is just, she's so likable and so earnest that you really do want to see her triumph. Tom is played by Luke Mabley. I don't know if I've seen him in anything else. I don't recognize the name outside of this movie, but he's really good. His chemistry with Billie Piper is very strong. It's very important for the end of the film. Again, not going to ruin anything. And I really like his subtle way of playing what kind of drew him to this house, and the reveal of that is very heartbreaking and intense, and I think he plays that very well. The asshole, Nick, is played by Sam Troughton, and he's great at making you hate him. This character is an asshole for through and through the sequence where one character punches another, you heard me discuss earlier. It's him punching his girlfriend, and it's a real fucked up scene. It's a horror film. Fucked up scenes happen, and he plays it very well. He makes you dislike his character and despise his character very well. So good on him for that. This has no bearing on him as a person. He's probably a very nice, sweet person. He's great at playing an asshole here, that's what I'm saying. Playing the girlfriend character, Adele, is Emma Catherwood, and she's probably the worst actress in here. Not necessarily terrible, but there are times where she sounds a bit wooden. Seeing the whole film, it kind of makes sense, but that should have been set up a bit earlier if that is the case. Far more importantly, though, the character's not a robot. The character is not like a zombie or anything like that, so maybe a bit more emotion in some of these line ratings would have definitely helped. Closer to the end of the movie, as the rest of the film is ramping up to be very memorable and engaging, she does get better, reveal, that sort of thing. But I feel her character's arc would have had more of an impact if she were replaced by an actress who would have brought out the more sympathetic things about the character and her story. She's not seeing much worse acting, but compared to everybody else around her, she's not, it doesn't feel like she's trying that hard. Finally, we have Tina, played by the one named Alsu. She's really good here. Her character is very tricky, but she walks that fine line of being creepy and mysterious and being an actual human being and that sort of thing. And I think in the hands of a lesser actress, this character arc of hers would not have worked whatsoever, and you would have felt like the whole movie was like slap in your face type deal, that kind of thing. As it is, I think it does work, and I think that's a lot to how she plays it, that kind of thing. The only other main character I haven't mentioned yet is Edmund Joseph, played by Chaki Okonkwo, who plays a character we see in several flashbacks, and he becomes very important to the house, what's going on, the clock, the spirit trap, all that jazz. And he's good. He doesn't have a ton of lines, he doesn't have a ton of things to do, but he's solid, he gets the job done quickly, and his chemistry with the rest of the cast works really well, so you can easily buy into what happens there at the end. Spirit Trap is flawed. Awkward editing, generic sounding plot, and a reliance on jump scares. But it reveals itself to be fairly original, especially by the end of the film. Has mostly solid actors and really good production design. So I do recommend it. It does, however, have one issue that's a bit hard to overcome. It's not that scary. It's a great ghost haunting mystery type movie. But if you're looking for a full-on horror film to scare you, I doubt this will fit that bill. It is not that scary. Engaging original plot makes it interesting, but if you're looking for a proper horror film, like The Conjuring, or one of the numerous Frankenstein movies, or anything like that, this is not horror in the strictest sense of the term. That doesn't bother me because I think it does work on its own merits as a ghost mystery type thing. I think production design and cinematography and all that are good enough to help me not care that perhaps it should be scarier than it is. And I do really like most of the actors in their roles, so I'm engaged with the characters and where they're heading and that sort of thing. But do be warned, not that scary. So, Spirit Trap, I do recommend it. If you can get a hold of it, definitely check it out. Just be aware, not totally a horror movie. As always, I've been your host. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.